Thank you for watching Snack and Learn, hosted by Pam Pryor.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday and for our very first Snack and Learn with somebody who is living in Costa Rica. And I cannot wait to introduce you to Richard Blank. There is so much I want to cover with him that I don't know how we're going to compress it into half an hour. So I've had to kind of handpick my topics. But let me give you a little background just to introduce Richard, and then I'm going to let him give us a little bit of his own perspective on things as well. But Richard's journey is actually in the call center space, and it's had a ton of twists and turns in it. So the long and short of it is that after a bunch of academic work, he returned when he was 27 years old to Costa Rica to train some employees for one of the really large call centers in San Jose, and he's effectively never come back. I'm sure I'm overstating it, but that's sort of the feel for it. And when you meet him, you're going to get to know why this is really, really interesting. He's the chief executive officer for Costa Rica's call center, and he's been that since 2008. He's got all sorts of commendations, all sorts of educational background that would just blow your mind. And the things that I want to really hit him up about have nothing to do with academics and degrees, because he's fascinating to talk to. I want to talk to him today about Costa Rica itself. I want to talk to him about gamification, how to get employees engaged in your company, and then micro expressions. I love the idea of phonetic micro expression reading, and this man comes to the table with some stuff he's really learned and put together around that. So without any more hoopla, Richard, welcome to Snack and Learn. How are you?
Pam, I'm so happy to be here today. Cannot wait to have a few snacks, learn a few things, and share some ideas with you and your amazing audience.
Is that a candy machine, speaking of snacks, that I see over your shoulder there?
Absolutely. That's the private VIP machine in my office. There's tons of candy on the floor, but now here's all you can eat, Pam.
Well, unfortunately, I've got to wait till my knee recovery. Everybody knows why I'm showing up in my lounge chair these days, and it's just because I'm still working on the knee recovery. But I would take all the candy in the world if I were actually getting a lot more motion these days. So give us a little, your perspective on that background and how it's brought you particularly to call center work, gamification, really understanding company culture and how to make it work well, and micro expression reading.
Oof, so much to go over in a short period
of
time, but we'll definitely get it done. I'm originally from Northeast Philadelphia. And so when I graduated Abington High School in 91, instead of going to law and medicine and Ivy League, I chose to go to the University of Arizona and double down on my favorite class, which was recess. Second favorite class was Spanish. So at Arizona, I was a Spanish communication major. I interned for Telemundo during college, sold beer for the importers of Corona post-grad.
Nice.
And when I was 27, I had a 1 in a million opportunity, Pam, to come and work at my friend's call center for just a couple months in Costa Rica and teach English. Well,
that was the end of
the 4 years, and I learned the business from the inside and out. And the next thing you know, a couple years later, I started my own call center.
Wow. And is it based in Costa Rica, or is that just one of your branches?
Oh, I wish I had multiple branches. No, we just got one 300-seat capacity call center here in Costa Rica. And I tell you what, entering the business, not as a C-level executive, but with the proletariat, I was able to break bread with them and sit next to them in cubicles and really get a chance to see what the business is like from the inside and out. Mm-hmm. And I learned that empathy and dignity go a long way, especially in this industry, to reduce attrition and to get people to really invest in it more of a career than just a transitional job.
Probably if they are applying it to their calls with their success rates as well.
Of course. But there's structure to it. You just can't have a rogue agent going out there. People do have experience. And in call centers, we have a quality control department. So we gauge you on KPIs and metrics. You have scripts and rebuttals, and there's also ways to train in regards to delivery and semantics, word choice. But if you can master the art of speech, which you have, Pam, then obviously relationships are much better. You can convert phone calls, retain clients, and just do exceptionally well.
Is your stuff mostly cold outbound calling? Is that, or is it following up on collections, or is it for entrepreneurs looking for, call sales teams, that kind of thing? What do you focus on? We have a lot of entrepreneurs in the group who I'm sure got their ears perked up wondering,
And for your audience, we handle everything from outbound calls for sales, appointment setting, lead gen. We also do inbound customer support and non-voice back office support. My suggestion for your audience is to not only communicate just with omni-channel non-voice support, where if you're just doing chats and emails, it's very frustrating. And clients don't like
Yes.
that. You could lose a client, not get an upsell referral or potential exit interview. So if you are capable of having this live interpersonal communication with prospective clients and existing clients, you have a much better business.
Awesome. And then you also do lead gen,
Yes, ma'am, we
like
do.
the cold call to get, narrow it down to do the conversion and all of that.
Oh, I can get through gatekeepers easily. There's a trick to it. It's called positive escalation. First, you understand their protocol. I'll mention their name. And before being transferred to you, Pam, I will definitely let that individual know how amazing they were. And when I do get transferred, I'll be mentioning it. Pam, I'll mention your associates verbally, and I'll also do it in writing. And so if I call your company back, people will remember me and add to my momentum, or it shows good faith prior to any sort of contracts.
I love this. So let me ask you a question. Do you also do things like, for example, what we do here is a lot of calling to get on podcasts.
Okay.
So if we had a list, or maybe we don't have a list, maybe you have a list of 100 podcasts. Does your call center do that kind of work as well?
We would be capable of making those phone calls.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's not just sales, it's also kind of PR work for people, getting them into a podcast, helping write the scripts for the people to make those calls, that kind of thing.
Sure, we can custom make any sort of campaign. We're very versatile, the agents that we have here. We're very selective of the campaigns that come in. It's a strict Catholic country, so the agents, it is a seller's market. They would choose to make those calls and feel comfortable with it. But let's just say you never even made those calls before. I'm very capable of writing scripts and doing rebuttals and working on email templates and voicemail templates.
That's awesome, because a lot of people don't know, like myself included. I don't know how to approach a podcast person and build the relationship the right way. I mean, I do know how to do it the long and slow way, and I could maybe work on 5 at a time like that. Sure. Listen to their podcast, add value to them, get to know them a little bit, and then ultimately get an invitation to be on the podcast. That's the tried and true way. And we're very focused on relationship building, certainly in our company and in this group that we're talking to now. But is there a way to scale that? Is impossible as one person. So it could be something that could be outsourced to a group like yours, specifically, to help kind of scale that.
A lot of it depends on list size. You could start off with an email blast and then just work with people that write you back. I personally believe that you making the calls, Pam, will be much more effective than an individual, depending on the size. And you were mentioned before about not having that sort of experience to convert that call. I say quite the contrary. Pam, you're an amazing person. You're very personable. You know how to speak with people and show active listening. The fact that you haven't been making cold calls for 20 years means that you don't have bad habits. That if you are starting to work with a call center, we could mold you and make certain suggestions. And so those are the sort of soft skills that would only increase in your ability.
I love that, because you're talking about a real partnership with whoever hires you to utilize the call center where it makes sense, but train up the client where it makes sense as well. Even if that training might just be self-confidence or, brushing off dusty skills kind of thing.
And a lot of it's dedicated practice. There are certain things we could suggest for you to practice on your own time. But I don't know, Pam. I think someone like yourself, just going off the bat and being raw and just showing your own pure essence of what you have, I think it would be received favorably, because most people do canned speeches. They grind through the calls and they lost the
Gotcha.
The artist player that got them in it in the first place.
It's not, I really listen to your podcast. I listen to your podcast and they barely remember the name of the podcast they listen to, as opposed to the work we actually do. Yeah,
it happens.
So that's interesting. And then, but for somebody who, say, is building a membership and they have a lead funnel in Facebook ads, but they're looking for another way to cultivate leads, this would be something you could help them with. Like, at what point does a client come to you and say, I could use help with this? Or what point would it be really beneficial for them to come to you and say, hey, I've got this situation. How can you help me?
Depends on if they're a specialist. or if there's
Okay.
other areas of their business they'd like to focus on. Let me give you an example from even myself and growing my business. I needed specialists for the IT department. Since I'm in a foreign country, I do need to understand the labor law. So I had to get an attorney and a human resources director and also an accountant. Could I do all these things? Potentially, but there's only so many hats you can wear and there's only so much time that you have. And so
Bingo.
I think if it makes sense for somebody to have someone prospect calls for them, set up appointments to call back, maybe a hot lead transfer, or just being able to receive those inbound calls for them while they're on other calls or on other appointments, that would make perfect sense to scale that way. And as long as you're giving us all the resources and that you have a very clean company culture that is enthusiastic, because there's a lot of times people might, I don't know, might have more of an aggressive tone and might think that something that could work in Manhattan or in Chicago or Philadelphia could be the same sort of vocabulary and momentum
In North
in Costa
Carolina.
Rica. Exactly. And so we just have to make sure that certain company cultures are able to mesh and that
Love
once
it.
again, we're following all the labor laws.
I love that. That's fantastic, because one of the things I think that people comes to mind when you think call center is, and this is what I really want to dive in with you because I love it, is that it's unhappy robots behind a phone who are just following a script and watching the clock to get out of there. Well, you've created something completely different than that. And like you were telling me, you've got game rooms and a cafe that the cafeteria is done in a 50s diner style. And you work with and train and provide your employees with resources. And one of the things I always felt was done wrong in corporate, and I always talked about, is that it was profits first, people second. And it doesn't work that way. You don't build a sustainable long-term culture that way. You build a quarterly responsive, soon to die Goliath that way.
Okay.
But the way that you really build a business is, you know, that people first means profits are also first, because they come right along with it. Tell me a little bit about what you do to engage your workforce there, and really, besides the fact that you've been in it and they know that you know what they do, what else do you do to really make this a different standout call center?
Well, I always think of the Chuck E. Cheese philosophy. If nobody shows up for your birthday, then you have no friends. And so you could try to put as much profits as you want in front of something, but if nobody shows up, you're not making any money.
Love
And
that.
so this industry, you're mentioning certain things you might see on TV. And Wolf of Wall Street, Glengarry, Boiler Room, Prime Gig, those are the hardcore boiler rooms and call centers that sell stock and other real estate. But there are a lot of amazing people that earn a living making and receiving phone calls. Now, I myself, I thrived in this industry. I didn't burn out. I was able to build my own center because I realized that there is an art of speech. If you're just looking at a clock and you're grinding it, why don't you go get another job? You shouldn't force yourself to do something you don't want to do. And you're also talking about a lost art. Most people are doing things via chat and email. And the fact that people are still capable of communicating, showing active listening, engaging in their cognitive skills, it only makes them more marketable.
Amen.
And their relationships outside of the call center do have an influence on the work that they do here. And so we're just not looking at someone that I'm looking to churn and burn. There might be an outside influence. And so I mentioned earlier about extending empathy. The fact that this soldier, and I have been in those shoes, might be off that day. I'll use a little Philly guilt, Pam. I'll say, listen, I know you're better than that, and you seem to be a little out of character. You're not smiling as much as usual. And as long as I follow the labor laws and just work within a certain parameter of resetting somebody and getting them to where they need to be, it'll be fine. But I have a niche. I got luxury here because English is their second language. So for the fact that they're getting a return of investment, there is stimulation there because they are speaking in a second language. They're not zoning out because of this such intense concentration for short periods of time for the translation. These people are incredible.
I love it.
If I can expand their vocabulary with a thesaurus so they can have similes and really work on their delivery, their earnings potential is limitless.
And they know that. You're investing in them for them, and it's a payback to the company as an after effect.
Well, the
but you're
attrition is
investing in them for them. Yeah,
of
it's
course.
so real. Tell me about this cafeteria. How did you do out a 50s cafeteria?
Well, there's always
50s
things you wanted as a kid. I had the space. And so, I mean, as you know, if you're going to fill it, you might as well get black and white tile and the red and white booths.
Love
And,
it. It's my
and you
Coca-Cola colors. It's my logo
exactly.
colors. Look at this.
And it just needs to be fun. I always think that if you think young, you act young. And so besides my pinball machines and jukeboxes and 50s cafes, I really tried to create an environment where people can let off steam, recharge batteries, hang out with me or make friends
I
and
love
make
it.
it inviting. So they can really, once again, reset themselves before going upstairs and hitting the phone again.
I love that. And speaking of games, like, right. So in fact, interestingly, I have a morning process I go through. And one of the things that I actually was listening to this morning was talking about, linking up things that are yucky to do with things that are fun to do and creating a almost gamified experience to get those yucky things done. Like, I don't know, maybe it's you call friends while you're on a walk if you don't like walking, or you walk while you're calling friends if you don't like talking on the phone and you do like walking. It may be the case, but
Sure.
you pair those things up so that it becomes a little more palatable and fun. To your point, I'm a big believer in all of life should be fun, be it at work or at home. And I know there are things that come and go. I'm talking about the overarching um, emotion ought to be fun, and if we can at all manage to do that. And um, how do you gamify the work where you are? How have you done that inside the call center?
What a fantastic question. Well, first is prior to even making a phone call, I addressed fear. So I let them know by learning a second language is 10 times harder than anything I'm about to put them on. So that puts that in perspective. Secondly, I'll give them all the resources. So I reduce fear that way of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're upstairs, there are certain sort of metrics that we can follow in our quality control department to make sure they do what they have to do. But for me, I really play on the soft skills. I'm not going to do a certain game where we're acting the fool or we're looking to look unprofessional, but maybe we will keep score on how many times I say the name Pam on the call and do the name drop. Did I use the military alphabet? Was there a positive escalation before the transferred call? And also in regards to active listening, is there certain chances where I was able to confirm for my edification, or even use a Me Too technique if there happened to be a dog barking in the background or another noise, that I could somehow address it, put it to bed, anchor in on something in common, grab my grip, and move from there. And so it's really more about just living in the now, active listening, and being exceptionally engaged in the phone call, because it zigs and zags. There's never straight lines in nature. And so as long as you are prepared, then there is no reason why you can't let the client assume they're in control of the conversation, where you're more just the rudder of the ship, and to be able to guide it along.
And do you give your team things to literally score themselves on so they can see themselves improve at this? Or that, like, I can see
They get their
myself.
recordings back. They've been graded. And when they listen to themselves, they'll realize if they were going too fast.
Yep.
When they interrupted or cross-talked or forgot to do the military alphabet or name drop. And so it's really not me or you saying anything, Pam. I'll just look at you and do this. Go, I know, Richard. I know I did that.
Yeah.
This is more, I'll just make the face during a certain time, and then they will. The self-improvement is from self-analysis. I couldn't agree with you more.
I love the idea of re-listening to the calls. And because then you can be objective with it, and you do pick up. I know when I re-listen to videos or snack and learns or other things, I'll pick up things that need improvement. And that's the only way you can do that, is if you look at it. I hate to use the term self-critically because it sounds critical, but it's really self-development.
Or areas of focus. I try to do things diplomatically, and then I'll always say, hey, Pam, would you mind if I make a suggestion? Then you say, yes, Richard. So now I have permission. And then instead of saying, you should do this, in order for me to have A, B, C, and D, I did this. Does this make sense? And then you would say yes. And then we practice some role play, and then you're good to go. I'll always address myself first. You did mention I made these calls before. And so the best thing for me to do is to share on how I was able to crack codes and master levels and get to where I am today. So it's humbling, but then again, it's reassuring.
I love that. So if somebody, what is the skill set that somebody should carry into a call center job?
Hey, fortune favors the brave. That's number one.
Ah,
People need dedicated practice. It's
okay.
it's muscle memory. They could be exhausted after an 8-hour shift of just receiving phone calls. It's a controlled environment. It might seem monotonous at times. You were mentioning the downside of a call center. But if somebody sees the art of speech and is constantly looking to ways to improve their vocabulary and do the, as you say, the 6 name drop during a call, then you have really increased your speaking skills. And if you think that call centers are the be all end all, no, not true. As I mentioned, you'll be exceptionally marketable. And if you can master this sort of environment, there's nothing else you can't do. And if you happen to start your own business, as your entrepreneurs are doing, you're prepared. And you're just not writing checks. You'll be walking the roads. You'll be sitting with your agents. You'll be onboarding them. You'll be supporting them. And those, I believe, are the best leaders.
I love that. And of the group that comes in the door and that you work with, it sounds like you do some pretty intensive training and culture work with them to adapt to the culture of your company, but still keep their own personal identity. The culture, when I say the culture, all I really mean is get them interested in that independent growth that they can have in this environment while still, totally embracing that total human that they're bringing to the table.
Sure. We have 2 types. We have those that have worked in a center before. So my difference in my culture, because we have the same equipment and the same sort of workflow, it's the fact that I know your name and that we're a small enough company where you can really, build here and I can delegate and promote you. And now if you never worked at a call center before, you're not coming in with any sort of bad habits.
Right.
Not a cancer. Pam, you and I could mold our squire into a knight.
Right.
So those are the sort of things, and a lot of them, if not most of them, will say that I'm the only boss that does know their name, which I think is a shame.
Yeah, it is.
But then again, if they want to continue this sort of culture and tradition when they do start their own company, maybe they'll be the 1% that actually makes the efforts.
They'll appreciate it. And it also goes back to something that I've felt ever since I started in the mailroom, frankly, is you can make any job a game. You can make any job fun. And what I like about this is you're not just making it a game for a game's sake. Like my game in the mailroom was that I could put tape on the floor, step 10 feet back from all those mail slots and toss letters and get it in the right slot. That's a game for a game's sake. There's no life growing skill I'm gaining there except being able to make something fun. You're actually gamifying this in a way that if somebody comes in here and says, wow, this is a chance to develop my speaking, and this wouldn't just be for English as a second language. I mean, we can always develop our speaking habits and our understanding of active listening and how to communicate. If that's the reason I'm there, the calls are really the tool for learning. They're basically practice exams over and over and over and over again for that growth.
Pam, you could save a divorce. You could save Thanksgiving dinner, friendships, just by having these sort of skills.
Yeah. I love how much there is to this and how you're doing it. And I have to ask, okay, so in your bio, you talk about, I hope I'm getting this term right, phonetic micro-expression reading.
Yes.
Tell me about this. You have got to share it.
Let me show you the picture first, if I may. Can you see that?
Okay. Yep, I can. Phonetic micro-expression reading. And then we've got pitch and rate.
Micro-expression reading is visual. You study body language and haptics and self and object adapters. There's a lot of ways you can gauge someone's reactions. But in my environment, you lose the luxury of sight.
Yeah,
and
it's all phone.
Phonetic micro-expression reading is purely sound-oriented. Now, I do believe that individuals give out tell signs in conversations. They're not even paying attention to it. It's almost like lazy speech. Phonetics is broken down quickly into tone, rate, pitch, and duration. In my opinion, a tone should be consistent. It should be confident and empathetic. You and I are focusing on the rate of speech and the pitch, the speaking level. I need to match that. So there's a mirror imaging technique. Why? So I can see how fast or how loud you go every 30 seconds to 2 minutes to see if there's a spike or a dip. That's usually when I ask a tie down or a pin down question, but that could still be manipulated. So I believe that an answering speed is something that people cannot control subconsciously. And so if they're inconsistent there, that's usually when you need to follow up with a certain question. This is happening on first-time phone calls. You are reading these individuals. And so a lot of the times people will be concerned on they didn't convert the call, get an appointment, or even make that sort of connection. Well, you left the door open. And besides asking your questions, getting the answers, there are, as I mentioned before, certain tell signs that people will give you. Because you've had calls before where you've called into a customer service department, very relaxed in the beginning, screaming at the end, or screaming in the beginning.
Guilty.
It happens like in a boxing match. So don't claim that the first 30 seconds of Pam is the same as the 5-minute in. And so as long as you can, and that's what expression reading is, you need to have a consistent variable to see inconsistencies. I chose 30 seconds to 2 minutes of time, which is the average attention span. And I also break it down into introductions, bodies, and conclusions for that period of time, because that's usually how a conversation flows. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. After 3 weeks, it becomes habit. And
It sounds magic to me.
It's not that complicated, because of the fact that you are still capable of doing your job, listening, working with people, but still in the back of your mind, doing that XY chart just to see how Pam is reacting. Is it a positive or negative reinforcement?
Yep.
And so if you can't do it on a call, then why don't you just study speech in movies,
right,
or in radio? And you just start just only analyzing that. In fact, if you want to make it even better, do it in a language you don't understand. Do it in German. Do it in French. Don't do it in English.
We probably do it in languages we don't understand without really knowing it. Like you can watch a conversation in a language you don't understand and get an idea very quickly of what type of conversation it is and who's escalating, who's calm, so I hear what that just really made a light bulb go off for me.
Sure. And it's good practice. It's something that you're capable of doing while you're working. And I also believe in luxury of time. There is impulse control. Somebody allows you a moment to sleep on it, take a walk, write a draft, maybe send it tomorrow. You might readjust yourself, not send the draft, say, Pam, I apologize for my tone yesterday, kind of thing. And there's ways in which to reset yourself. So I think you should be using time as your advantage, because Pam today could be different tomorrow. Right. And so these are the sort of things you must take into consideration for long-term relationships.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting. I'm going to interject with a little story right now, because we just actually had a team meeting. Okay. And like you said, 30-second Pam's not 5-minute Pam's not the same Pam. Same with Richard. You're not the Richard half an hour ago that you're on the call, but you kind of are the same person inside. But we just had this meeting. We're having a great team meeting. And all of a sudden it hit me that our drive was unorganized, like where we keep all of our files. And I just basically said, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be a priority and be done in a month. And like, I just shifted in that moment in my whole temper, my whole delivery, my whole everything from my normal kind of bubbly self, because a trigger had been hit. We couldn't find a file to work on together. So we wasted like 5 or 10 minutes trying to find it. And, so I hear what you're saying. It's like, so you'll take a 30 to 2 minute increment, analyze where the ups and downs are in rate and pitch of speech.
Loud, soft, fast, and slow. Usually people are in quadrant 1. Like for an example, if you're going to gauge me on 8 in speed and 8 in sound. That's been consistent for the last 25 minutes. If by chance I go lower, slower, go to second, third, or fourth quadrant, that's a major red flag. That's the times when you need clarification, edification, or potentially the person could be facetious with you and you might need to ensure that you're getting the right answer. It's something that doesn't happen overnight. And you were asking me before about a burnout, bored, watching the clock. Well, yeah, that happens. So what could I do in this environment besides doing my job? Well, I'm speaking to 150 people a day. Besides converting calls and being the best I could be, is there anything else I could do on this? Yeah, drop your name a couple more times. Use that military alphabet. Ask a follow-up question in regard to your dog barking. And master this micro expression reading, because my timing was on. It's almost like mentalism. You know when to interject. You know when to ask open-ended questions and allow you to answer for me. And so, not saying I've been manipulating conversations, but if you look at my metrics, my talk time is twice as much. I'm making half the amount of calls a day because I'm speaking to more people. And my numbers are through the roof because I'm closing more deals.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing differently? Pam and I are having the best phone calls ever. That's what I'm doing. And so that's the difference between myself and somebody else that's just grinding those calls.
I absolutely love that. And folks, I want you, whether you're watching this live or on the replay, I want you to circle back to this and play this section over again here at we started at about 25 minutes in, and I'll mark that in the comments. But this concept of listening in a way that's not just everything you've always heard about, active listening and, repeating things back and making sure you understand. This is a very unique, and thank you, Richard, for sharing it with us. I'm guessing you kind of developed this thought process on the 2-axis graph. And think about next time you're in conversation with somebody, in the background, just have a little picture of that down on your paper. Take a 30-second or a 2-minute time frame, probably closer to a minute and a half or 2 minutes, I'm guessing the cycle is.
Could go be as quick as 30 seconds up to 2 minutes. I always look for, that's what I learned in college. When we were doing focus group studies in my communication classes, you look for consistent variables. You need to put it into categories and subcategories. So for me, it was almost the language that I knew in college. I just applied it towards phonetics. And then once again, phonetics was as simple as tone, rate, pitch, duration. The tone, you don't want to match it because if someone's angry. But then again, I saw the rate and the pitch. And then the duration was the real special sauce, the real tell sign, the answering speed, which is the funniest thing because phonetics is sound. And I'm saying, hey, Pam, the greatest tell sign you have is
the silence.
That's what makes you a genius.
I love it. And when you say duration, just to make sure we're all clear on it, you mean how long they wait before they say something?
How quickly it takes them to answer you. Yes.
How long it takes to answer. Okay.
That's why the cops usually ask the third or fourth tough question during the interrogations. You'll see things change immediately. You can manipulate, Pam, your tone, your rate, and your pitch. It's almost impossible for you to go 10 for 10 in regards to your answering speed.
Well, you'd probably drive somebody crazy if you did, wouldn't you? Don't we need the variety?
Well, then I think you're a genius. If you're capable of controlling your subconscious like that, because you can't.
Or a genius or a, what do they call them? Psychopath.
Or look at somebody that has things food and thinks that everything is great, but once they put in special hot sauce, they can't help but spit it out, sweat, and need to drink 5 gallons of water. So your body physiologically can only handle things so much. Yeah. And so as I say before, the tell sound is the pure, it's the id of the person, not the ego or the persona, which is the tone, rate, and pitch.
I love that. Wow, you've done some amazing thinking on this. I love it. Do you speak on the road about these topics at all? Or are you focused totally on your call center?
Just on the call center at the moment. When I'm doing these podcasts, I just love sharing ideas with my friends and putting wind in your sails, Pam. And I loved your show. So it inspired me enough to write you. And here we are today. And
well, I'm so glad we're in each other's circles because this has been one of the most fascinating conversations. And I've written down a ton of notes. I'm going to play around with them as well, because I find everything about communication and all of this and just we hit on so many points. The communication and making it effective, creating a culture where people really want to work, feel valued, learn and develop. And if the next thing they do is go off and be an entrepreneur, that's wonderful for everybody. And then gamification.
Just promise me this though, just like fire, it could be used for warmth and health and can also burn.
Yep.
When your audience, when they master these skills, they're going to become a lot more lucid.
Yeah.
When they're speaking with people. And so I would appreciate if they use this sort of delicate skill to not embarrass somebody publicly or to put them down, because you are going to be crystal clear on what's happening. Use your diplomacy and strategy by asking for clarification and edification during those periods of time.
I love that. And the thing I love about this group and why I do this here and share these kind of skills is that we screen it very carefully for that very reason. And it's folks who want to do things the right way. It's folks who understand and agree with our concepts about people, not only first, but profit is a derivative of people, not the other way around, kind of thing. And looking to build things on relationships in a meaningful yet also scalable way. And I think you've kind of given us the best of both of those. Well, folks, listen, if you're in your business are ready to start getting some help on, and I'm going to list a few and then you can tell me what I'm missing, but lead generation, call conversion, what else would they call you for if they need some oomph and muscle behind their business practices?
Remember, sales, appointment setting, lead generation, customer support, back office support.
There you go. Much longer and better list than I could do. It's really your client. It's really potentially a client journey from lead all the way through support once they're in your business working. And I have a very strong feeling that calls you get from this call center have a unique impact on people. It's different than the ones that I'm getting every 5 seconds because I work with so many clients on their financing, saying, hey, we have $3 million for you at 4% over 10 years. Those kind of calls. It sounds to me like there's a relationship building from the minute I pick up the phone.
It can be. It depends on the vertical. We're very selective of what comes in here, but I promise, Pam, we'll never call you at dinner.
You're not one of these.
Sort of
That's okay. I never answer them anyway. That's why I let them go to voicemail. But
perfect.
All right, great. Well, this has been wonderful. I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us in the group. I know folks might have questions. If they do, I will just circle back with you and get answers for them. I've gotten a ton out of this. I can't wait kind of for my next phone call, my next conversation to really start trying to dial in the pitch and rate concept here. It really sounds interesting to me, and I'll practice on my family, so I'll tell them I'm practicing, and then it won't look obvious when I'm on a call. Hang on just a second. I need to draw something on my graph. So thank you so much. This has been a blast.
Had a wonderful time, Pam. Thank you.
Awesome. Folks, have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll be back with you, I believe, this Thursday again. And you know where to find us. Drop your questions, drop your comments. That's my dog signing off for us. Have a great afternoon.